I expect you can guess kind of vaguely what it is.
I'm assuming it's a can of food.
It is a can of food, and if you look at it closely, the canning process was invented earlier than the tin can opener. So they used kind of whatever they could just to get into the can. That's why it's got that slight gouge in the.
I've certainly had to break into a few cans.
Kind of desperate.
Get the ice axe out.
Times.
Yeah.
So it comes from the 1845 British Naval Northwest Passage Expedition is the long title, which was led by John Franklin. And Franklin himself had already been to the Arctic several times. And so Franklin goes in 1845. He's not the first choice for the expedition leader. That's James Clark Ross, whose name I'm sure you're very familiar with. And they take with them hundreds and hundreds of these tins of food. They've got tinned peas, tinned potatoes, tinned meat, just about everything that you can think of. But unfortunately, the expedition seems to get caught in a particularly unforgiving part of the Arctic. And I think you've been to the Arctic, so could you tell us a little bit about what the conditions can be like if it's rough and cold?
I suppose the best way to think about it is it's sea surrounded by a landmass, whereas Antarctica's land surrounded by a sea mass. Yeah. So you end up getting a subtly sort of different climate. It can be a lot sort of moister, and therefore that kind of dampness that can get through you. The sort of sea mist was quite prevalent, I think, in certainly, well, it still is now, but I certainly have read that it was quite prevalent in those days. So you definitely get a lot of storms, a lot of wind, but also just a dampness and a lot of sort of frost would form on things. So I think it'd be a struggle to dry things out sufficiently.
Gosh, can you imagine being on a ship with all these men just kind of gently steaming away? It must have been particularly
this is the other thing, of course. You'll go out at night and you'll freeze. You'll maybe go into your bunk and it'll be cold and you'll breathe out, and that condenses on the ceiling, freezes, and then as the ship warms up, everybody's sweat and breath will start raining down on you, I imagine.
Lovely. But one of the things about the expedition is that we don't really know what happened to them. British Arctic expeditions in the 19th century were expected to be away for several years. So you'd set off in the spring, go as far as you can, expect to find a safe harbour, wait for the sea ice to form in the autumn, winter, wait for it to melt, and then off you go again. Unfortunately, with this expedition, they seem to have found themselves in a really inhospitable part of the Arctic, which local people called the back of beyond, because there was literally no game, nothing there, and they were just stuck. The sea ice didn't melt, they couldn't move on. And these tins with the lead solder are proposed as one of the reasons that something bad happened. Did the lead leach into the food? Were they ingesting lead all the time? I mean, undoubtedly, scurvy probably would have been a problem, hypothermia. But yeah, so was the tinned food to blame? I mean, that's kind of, I suppose, when you're relying on the supplies that you have, what can you do?
The one thing that is sort of easy to do is when you open up food or open up a packet, it's usually quite simple to tell that it's gone rancid.
Okay.
However, I would caveat that with my very first time in Antarctica. I was going through my ration box and we had some chocolate in there. But I was eating my way through this and I'm just like, it's got a really weird aftertaste. But, you know, it's been in a box for 10 years. It is what it is. And I'd been eating like bar after bar, and I eventually offered one to one of the other guides that was out there. There was a 4-person team out there. And he took one bite and spat it out on the snow, and he's just like, "Well, why is your chocolate just soaked in kerosene?"
Oh no!
And I'd of course, I just put it down to the fact that it was old and I should get used to it. And I was just eating fuel soaked. And after that, I'd realised, okay, actually, just common sense prevails. If it tastes wrong, it's wrong.
So no naked flames around.
No naked flames around. Exactly. Yeah.